Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined tonight with Tayte in the Hour to give our review on Mother! Directed by Darren Aronofsky. It's the latest psychological horror film. And oh boy, we have so much to talk about. This is going to be very heavy going. This is going to be very analysis based. For the latter part of our review, we're going to kick off with spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about us giving anything away. We'll give you fair warning when we do get to the spoilers. This is probably going to be one of the toughest reviews we've ever had to do, purely based on how much symbolism is in this movie. And I want to make a point that with this film, I stayed away relatively from reviews, but all the reviews that I was seeing were saying that this isn't the film that you think you're going to get based on trailers. And I actually think that the marketing for this film, although I thought it was fantastic, we both saw the trailer, we both liked it. I think a lot of people are divided on this film. It's not doing too great. The word of mouth isn't all that well. And I think that's purely based on the advertising and the trailers making this seem to be a run-of-the-mill horror film. When you see from the very first shot of this movie, from the very first 5 minutes, this is a Darren Aronofsky horror film. So if you've seen any of his previous works before, you should know exactly what you're getting in for.
Every film except for The Wrestler, we can talk about, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we compare it to. In fact, with The Wrestler, we could compare it with some of the themes as well. You could basically compare it to any of the themes he's done in his previous films. The best way of putting this film, as far as first impressions coming out the cinema are concerned, was this film is going to be the most analyzed film for years to come. There are about 50 different ways you can look at this film. And I'm still thinking of more ways right now on the spot. It's ridiculous. It's a very heavy film. Like, it's completely different from the trailers. The trailers basically show you a normal horror film, psychological horror, that is, with some elements. You think it's going to be about one thing. I mean, from the trailers, I thought it was going to be about, like, I don't know, a weird cult herd with Satan and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and say it's not, but you could interpret it in that way.
Yeah. No, when I saw the trailers, I thought it was going to be a merge of something like Rosemary's Baby mixed with The Shining. The music in the trailer was very Hitchcock.
I thought it was going to be
as well.
Yeah, Rosemary's Baby, Shining. Yeah. Maybe even a mixture of what's that film called?
Like The Omen or something like that.
The Omen, yeah, or like Cabin in the Woods, maybe even. Yeah, but no, it's I don't even know how to explain it without saying everything.
We'll stick to psychological horror film now. We could talk about Darren Aronofsky, sorry, for a bit with his previous films. Most people bring up as Noah as pretty much the only exception of his work that's, you know, that's the bad one out of his career. All the rest of his films I absolutely love. The Fountain, I think, is great, and there's actually quite a lot of similar ideas from The Fountain in this movie. I'd say out of all his films, that's probably the one that it's closest to. The stylistic aspects go into Black Swan, some sequences from that.
I was going to say
I really like.
It's a horror in the sense of Black Swan, but takes it to a completely different level.
Yeah. And it's also a film comparing to Requiem for a Dream that makes you just walk out and go, definitely. I need to question life and everything in it now.
It's quite an interesting one. And I think a lot of reviewers, it's complete split down the middle. People either think it is the best film of the year so far, or they think it is the biggest piece of trash they've ever seen. It's all about interpretation, the way that your own mind works. And if a film is able to do that, I don't care if you like it or not, it's a good film. There's no point in denying it. And Aronofsky has had one mishit, I would say, and that, of course, he says Noah. I don't think anyone went to go see that. I don't think anyone who saw it liked it. It was a sci-fi version of Noah's Ark with rock monsters or something like that. Like, it basically imitated The Hobbit. I don't even know which came first.
Can I just say, this movie kind of rips on The Hobbit as well. At least the opening. In fact, this movie is kind of an elongated sequence of the unexpected party from The Hobbit.
Yeah, but this, I think Commode said it best when he said, after seeing this film, you need to go and have a walk. You need to let this film breathe. You need to think about it. You can't immediately judge the film. You need to go away and literally just think, match everything together, process all the information, because they give you a lot of information in a 2-hour long span. This film could have easily been slightly slower paced, and I think the pacing on this film was good, but it could have been slightly slower paced and would have easily been 4 or 5 hours long. That's extra 3 hours I'm already adding on by just slowing the pace down a tiny bit.
Yeah, and just the mood that this movie creates, that's definitely one of its strongest points for me, because I don't think a single second went by in this movie where, you know, I felt at ease. It was really, it was like The Shining, where there's always that sense of tension running throughout it.
A very, very low level of tension and uneasiness. Like, when you watch a horror film, modern day horror films, any of the Saw films, Paranormal Activity, you're expecting a jump scare. Jump scare is the easiest, cheapest form of getting people to react to your movie. So what they'll do is they'll build up, jump scare. They may even not even build up. They just may throw in the jump scare for any case or cause. You're expecting a jump scare in this movie, and I think there's only one. And the jump scare works best because it's built up over so much time. There is so much tension with zero payoff, to the point where it almost desensitizes you. And the jump scare isn't even like a flash up on the screen. It's a slow one. It's one that draws you in closer and then spits you out immediately. And I think that's down to the way it's filmed, that's down to the way it's acted, it's down to everything. The setup for this film just... Here's the thing. If we told you what this film was about and you went into it, it would be a completely different experience to going in and knowing nothing. So it's difficult, because I said to you, Chris, before the start of this film, if I was going to recommend this film, I would say no. And I can process it in my head why I'm telling people not to watch this film. But I think it's one of the best films of the year.
Yeah, me too.
But I think people won't like it because they won't have enough time to process it, and it's not for general audiences. It truly is an art house film. And if you're like a film snob, like I guess me, Chris, or most of the people who are subscribed to this podcast, but for general audiences, they will hate it because it isn't a jump scare film. It isn't a film with, I would say, a massive payoff or a final answer. It isn't a satisfying conclusion in most cases. It's a film that you have to think for yourself, and a lot of general audiences go to a film to relax, not really think about stuff. It's why Fast and Furious films and Transformers films are so popular. You don't have to think about the trash that's on the screen. You just have to watch the screen. With this film, you have to think throughout the film. You have to think after the film. It's an experience. So if you're a lover of cinema, go see it. If you like cinema, it's not for you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And this is going to make me sound like a real snob right now. And I hate saying this, but this is how I felt. When the movie finished, I sat through the entire credits. I just sat to my thoughts. I was mulling it over. I was trying to deconstruct it as the credits were going up. Everyone else, I could hear laughter. I could hear sighs. I could hear people tutting in the last couple of minutes of the movie.
I had booze.
Yeah.
I had booze in my performance. I had people leaving.
Yeah, I could, like, people were shaking their head. People were just, I could hear them. And like everyone walked out. I was there. And I don't want to get really snobby about it, but I think and there wasn't that many people in the cinema, in all honesty. There was probably about 20 in total, including myself. They just didn't get it. And that's fair. And that's absolutely fair. If they went in expecting what the trailers made it out to be, if they were going in expecting something, the same month as the release of It, another horror film like that, that's completely fair enough. Maybe it wasn't the film they wanted. I went into it knowing that this was going to be a deeper, more psychological film, probably going to have multi-layers and themes to it, which is absolutely what this movie is. And in the last couple of moments, I got it. Everything clicked. Everything fitted into place. And we've talked a little bit about this film before we hit record. And you even brought up some things that I hadn't even picked up. And now I want to see this movie a second time to pick up even more stuff. And to me, that's a sign of a good movie. If a movie can do that, if it can make you think, if it can make you question, even now, I saw this film yesterday. You actually tried to call me yesterday, I guess, to sort of like mull over some of these ideas as well.
I wanted to chat, Chris.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tate.
I'm glad we're doing it now.
I need to pay you back for that. You were there for me for Transformers. I need to make that up to you another time.
I do want to point out that this film, it's a story which a lot of people will know. That's all I can say. And there is a lot to process with it. But it just feels different. It feels new. It feels genre changing, dare I say it. Like, I seriously think that this film, I mean, some films take a while to, they're slow hits. Some films people hate at the start and then they love them. Blade Runner being a brilliant example of that. Like, people hated it when it came out. It's now heralded as the greatest sci-fi film of all time, even above Star Wars in some cases. I think this film, give it 5 years, it'll be up there on levels of The Shining. People will be praising it for everything. It's going to be analyzed by film schools and media productions for decades to come, and it's going to inspire filmmakers to go in that direction and do this kind of storytelling in this technique. A lot of people are comparing it to Lynch, and it's very Lynch-like as far as its horror is concerned. But yeah, this film, right now, I'm still processing it, but the more I talk about it, the more I think, wow, this film is phenomenal. But at the same time, I know people won't like it, and I can understand why they don't like it.
If I was going to think of any criticisms with the film, and again, this is spoiler-free, so I can't give anything away too much. This is really difficult to talk about without going into the whole crux of what the movie is. A lot of people have been criticizing Jennifer Lawrence in the film. And
I think no, she should be up for an Oscar for this. I think she's won the Oscar before for what was it? Silver Linings Playbook. I think this performance is better than that.
It feels very been there, done that. It doesn't feel like she has her emotional moments and things like that and freakouts in Hunger Games, in X-Men as well. I'm feeling a bit of Jennifer Lawrence fatigue at this point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's very difficult for me. Actually, I have this problem with many actors where I struggle to see them as a character. I just see them as the actor. Tom Cruise is an example of that. When I see that, I never see him playing a character. I always see Tom Cruise. I have that with Jennifer Lawrence as well. Javier Bardem was great as well. But I've seen a lot of people talk about the actual chemistry between the couple in this film and how it doesn't feel genuine. But I can't give that as a complaint, because when you get to the end of this film and you understand what the point of this is about, then that makes sense why their relationship would be like that. I can't go in depth into that. That's really me just clutching at straws to find anything bad about this film. Positives, I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was absolutely incredible. I haven't seen her in a movie probably since Stardust, actually. It's been quite a few years. I thought she was great. Ed Harris as well. There's even some actors in there, which I'm not going to spoil right now, that crop up that I didn't expect to see in this film. No, it's just
very unusual cameos, especially towards the end. You just notice people just like, oh, you're in the film. Oh God, you're okay. Whoa, what's happening now then? But this film develops. It really does. It takes quite a slow start, I would say, but that's just building and building. And as the tension gets higher to the boiling point, it speeds up rapidly, and I think that suits the film. But yeah, I don't think there's much more I can say about it without spoiling anything. The score, maybe?
Yeah, so the score was done with Clint Mansell, who's a long-time collaborator with Darren Aronofsky, and Johan Johansson, who did the music for Arrival, the Villeneuve film, and is going to be doing the music to Blade Runner 2049. In all honesty, I really didn't like the music. It kind of fades into the background and you don't notice it. Yeah. I was hoping for a soundtrack akin to what was in the trailer, which I said was very Hitchcockian.
Yes,
it was very
creepy. Would have been. But I feel like the lack of music in the film, you could definitely, you're aware when there was a lack of music in the film, let's say. Silence is used quite a lot in this film, and it's used very effectively, to the point where when there is music in the background, you don't realize it, but you do realize the silence.
Yeah.
And maybe that was what they were trying to emphasize, because I think silence is a horror film's best weapon.
Yeah.
You don't even have to have a jump scare, and silence is scary. But I think I put this up on Facebook. This film isn't a scary film, and some horror films shouldn't be scary. This film was horrifying. And that is what they should be aiming for. Once again, I'm going to keep on harking at the fact that I hate modern-day horror films, because it's just jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. Or you go in the other direction and you just do nothing but body gore. It's not horror. It's it's just imitation. This film was immersive, and this film took you into it. And there is one moment in this film where the audience can either be kind of blissfully unaware or laughing at one moment, and then with literally one sound bite, it could be put down to the entire audience silenced. I heard gasps. People walked out immediately after it happened, probably
Really?
out of shock. Yeah, that was the moment where people walked out. That was the moment where people walked out. But it was a couple. So another point. I think my dad was talking about this. In Commode's podcast, he stated that there was a screener session in America somewhere, or maybe it was the UK. But there is sometimes they do screenings for like mothers who want to breastfeed or have little children, babies, and they still want to watch films and stuff like that. And they were showing Mother, and it's probably the most inappropriate film for a mother to watch, and it's probably the most inappropriate film to watch if you're planning on having a kid very soon, or if you're pregnant. This is the worst film to watch ever. Like, I wouldn't put... literally, Serbian film is mild compared to this film if you're pregnant.
Oh, God.
It's ridiculous.
Well, we've won Brinsley over in the comments. He says, gotta say, I do want to see this movie now. So our job here is done, I guess. He's also said that apparently Aronofsky wrote a statement before like on the screen and showing before people went to see it about the film. And apparently he said something like he wrote it in 5 days and compared it to a fever dream. And he also wrote a lot about what troubles him in the world. Well, you can definitely see those troubles coming through in this script. Yeah. And as you said, 5 days, maybe 6. That definitely is in some relation to the film. I think that's pretty much all I can say at this point without going straight into spoilers. Now, this spoiler section is basically going to be an analysis section. We're going to do our level best to go through everything we can think of. We're probably going to miss out a whole bunch of stuff. But literally, if you haven't seen this movie, if you're even mildly curious, please go and see it, because this is a film. Stay away from reviews, stay away from analysis and everything like that, spoilers. Go in with your own interpretation, because like the film itself, a big meaning of the film towards the end is, you know, interpretation of the masses based on one thing. Yeah. Go in with your own interpretation.
And another thing I want to point out, a lot of films nowadays, horror films at least, are 15s because it's a wider audience they can aim for. It fits the horror genre a little bit more. You get in a lot more people. This film was an 18 and deserved that rating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. When like the was it like the certificate came up at the beginning and said 18? I thought it was a 15. I didn't realize it was an 18. I thought, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good.
Excite you when you saw that? It's an 18.
In all honesty, it's been a while since I've seen an 18, because in terms of what films can get away with now, they've crept right down the certificates. Like, you can get some action gore in 12s, you can get it in 15s now. It's been very rare.
What would have been like a 15 in the olden days, which would have been an 18, is now 18s are now 15s, 15s are now 12s or 12As, 12s are now PG friendly.
Yeah.
And yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so that'll do it for our spoiler-free section of Mother. Again, please go and see this movie. Please support this movie. But obviously, go into it with the right frame of mind. Don't go in expecting just a regular run-of-the-mill horror film that you see that a dime a dozen. This is a thinking person's horror film. And I know that sounds really snobby to say, but it is. Go in with that and bear that in mind. Tate, where do we even begin with the analysis?
Okay. Everyone, I do want to point out, turn away now if you don't want literally the entire plot spoiled in one sentence. Okay? We've given you fair warning. Chris, what was your "it was the Bible" moment?
Probably the moment where droves of people are making a pilgrimage to the house in order to see Javier Bardem, to hear his words. That was where I got the impression of it, and then that was cemented for me pretty much at the end when he survived the blast.
I wrote it off as, okay, so he started a cult, and then I thought, oh, the cult has started a war. The war has... I thought it moved on from there. I was going with a completely different plot up until the moment where the baby gets paraded around. That was the moment where I was like, yeah,
that bit
the
too.
Bible.
Yeah,
it's the Bible.
Yeah, so basically, if you go on
much.
IMDb, if you go on Wikipedia and you look at the cast list, the cast names, the characters' names, you might get an inkling of what this film's about, and that's exactly what it is. Jennifer Lawrence is called Mother. Javier Bardem's character is called Him with a capital H. And then you've got man, woman, brother, older brother. Yeah, it's biblical. It's basically the whole film is a metaphor for religion, faith, Christianity, creation, and everything that goes along with it. And I can understand some people thinking it's very up its own arse. It's a very artsy-fartsy way of getting your message across. But I don't know. I was just completely enraptured by this movie.
Here's
love
the thing, though.
what they did with it.
You don't have to interpret it as the Bible. And like I said, there are 50 different ways that you can see this film. Like one of them, which I think I said beforehand, was that it's about fame. It's all about the effects of fame on a relationship and how someone becoming famous can tear down the walls of what was once love. It's also about love. It's about just a normal couple and the ins and outs of what they can go through if they have a disagreement or an argument. It's a home invasion film. There are these people who just keep on coming in and in and in, and they're stealing stuff, they're killing people. It can be seen on that angle. It can be seen about drugs. You see Jennifer Lawrence taking what looks like, I know, liquid, something that makes her calm down. That can be seen as everything past those points are hallucinations, and the only times where she's really herself is when she is shaking and she is having those problems because she's an addict. You could see it as the cult, you could see it as religion, you could see it as Mother Nature's turmoil, and like him representing all of man with Javier Bardem, and just everyone else is just a follower of one single man and what the damage they can do to the planet. You could see it as so many different things, hence why I think it's going to be analyzed to the death of it. This
you
film
could easily
was so
write a dissertation on this movie. You could do a 10,000 word dissertation on this movie.
You could write multiple. You could write a dissertation purely based on the Christianity side of it, because I think I said I only figured this out last night, like 2 hours after watching the film. I was going back through the film in my head. I was like, okay, so it's about the Bible. What other events take place in the Bible? Okay, so we got Adam and Eve. Okay, but how's Eve created? The rib. And then I just picture in my mind, because there is what's-it-called? There's a scene where Ed Gein's character is sat, like, sorry, Ed Harris is sat looking down into the toilet. He's throwing up, he's being ill. And Javier Bardem basically says he's just ill, and he's covering up basically a red area on his back, which is obviously his rib, which has been taken out to create Eve. So yeah,
because his wife hadn't shown up then, and Jennifer Lawrence says, "I didn't realize he had a wife," and then she showed.
And then we've got Cain and Abel, which is probably the most obvious one, but you don't figure it out until the end. It could be, you literally could figure it out then. And then I haven't researched this, but I think I said to you once again beforehand, I'm pretty sure that the speech that he says on the funeral could be a psalm or some sort of biblical passage or something like that. We have.
Well, that's really the words that he gives. That's the crux of everything. When he does that, that's what gives hope to the people. And I think that's really the cornerstone. Although he still has writer's block at that point, and he doesn't get inspiration until Jennifer Lawrence is pregnant. I think that's really the turning point of it, when he talks about life and his need to create as a god, as a deity, as whatever you want to call Javier Bardem's character in this film.
We have the crystal being the apple, the tree of knowledge, the original sin. They've gone in somewhere where they shouldn't have. They've gone and touched a thing they shouldn't have through temptation. And immediately after that scene, we see Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer's basically, I'd say, 15 rated sex scene.
Yeah.
And that is because they are now free from that kind of command. They've committed the original sin. Now they're going to go bear children onto the world. And literally everything, when you think about this film and think it's religion, you can think all the way through the film, you can pick out any point. I think we said as well, once Jennifer Lawrence has had the child, there are 3 gifts left for her.
Yeah.
Symbolizing the 3 wise men. I'm sure that there was probably 13, or they tried to get into 3 rooms, and it was the 3rd room that they tried to get into that was successful.
There's also another rule of 3 in the film as well, and I'm going to have to watch it a second time to make doubly sure of this, but the film itself, the color palette of the film is very grainy, it's very muted, but there's 3 moments in the film where it fades to bright white, and that's when Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem first have sex, so conception, when the baby's born, and ultimately when, I think it's when Jennifer Lawrence dies at the end.
Yeah.
So it's like all the stages of life.
But, like, just everything about this film, man.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. It's absolutely absurd. It's all over the place.
Well, when you get to Kristen Wiig at the end, and she's doing some kind of snuff thing where she's like wrapping people's heads in plastic bags and just like casually walking and shooting them, and said like, bring in another 6. That's where I started to lose the plot a little bit. I was like,
no, that is this movie? No, that is one of the deadly sins. No, there's something here. I'm sure there is, because we see murder, we see prostitution, we see extortion, we see all these different sins being committed onto the world. We see war, we see... Do we see famine? I'm sure we do, with people not getting food. We see the table turned. That's a Jesus thing. We see Jesus himself being carried out into the world, and I'm pretty sure there is 40 seconds there symbolizing the 40 days and nights of Jesus in the desert. We then have the moment which absolutely shook everyone and probably will shake anyone in this film, where the baby's neck snaps, which I think probably earned it the 18 rating there.
That was it. That was absolutely
holy shit. That was that's probably the biggest moment for me ever when seeing a film. And then it goes on, and it has the baby mutilated and fed to the people. Ripped apart and fed to the people,
like Holy Communion, the body of Christ, that kind of thing. That was probably the moment where I clocked on, thinking, okay.
You can also see this as obviously Mother Nature, being Mother, Jennifer Lawrence's character, wants the world to be at peace, wants to be left alone, doesn't want mankind invading, but all these things taking place. She gives a gift onto this world with God in the shape of Jesus, and Jesus goes down and is instead sacrificed. And I think the angle here they went with is God is the poet. God is the person who creates, and people follow his wisdom and guidance. And Mother Nature is basically the person who usually listens to the poetry, listens to what God says, but instead now he has a different chain of command. He has a different person, different thing that he preaches to, different thing that he cares about more, and that is the people. And I think it's that speech that she says when they're eating the baby, saying, this is the true inspiration. This is love. This is death. This is life. This is what life is all about. Something that is sacrificed. We will forgive and we will move on. That summarizes that entire religion in general. And there are so many. It's just.
There are some other bits in the movie which I'm still trying to wrap my head around completely, and I don't know if they were just in there for like the horror aspect, the psychological horror.
There was some,
the floorboard with the blood.
I see that. I can understand that. That is blood seeping into the foundations, right there, and that is also the fact that the first death in the world has left a scar upon everyone else. And will always leave a scar there.
I saw that as a way, because throughout the movie as well, there's scenes where Jennifer Lawrence sort of like puts her head next to the walls of the house, and then it fades into the brickwork, into the wall itself, and there's like an actual heart of the house that's beaten.
Yeah.
And throughout the film, we see that wither away more and more as essentially the love in her for Javier Bardem dies as she grows more and more, disconnected with him.
Yeah.
There's a moment where she sees this blood. It's when she's wiped up the blood of the brother that's murdered in the film, but there's still a little bit there, and it sort of like seeps and it sort of like grows and like creates its own like entity. and she puts a rug over it. And then when she patches everything up with Javier Bardem, she goes back and there's nothing there. And that's literally, in that instance of moving the mat over it, it's like trying to cover up, trying to like hide cracks in the relationship.
Yeah.
And although like you can move on, it's always going to be there.
We could make a list of ways that you can interpret this film.
Yeah.
And
we don't have a plan for this, by the way, guys. We are completely going off the cuff here. So there's probably a lot of stuff we're going to miss.
The more I think about this film, the more I talk about this film, the better it becomes.
Yeah. I don't think there's been a film this year that I could analyze as much as this.
I don't think there's been a film this year which challenges cinema as much as this.
Mm-hmm.
And people hate it.
Yeah. And I think it's, again, I keep saying it, it's based on how this was marketed. I really genuinely think this was how it was marketed.
If it was marketed as a Christian film, no one would see it.
Yeah. It's
like Noah. He understood that mistake.
It's doomed if it does, and it's doomed if it doesn't, you know? Because when we did our It review at George's, we looked at the IMDb for this film, and it was on a 6.9. I don't know what it's on currently. It was on a 6.9 when we watched it, and I was...
It's on a 6.7 now, I believe.
I was expecting like an 8, 9, maybe even like 9.5, something like that.
Sorry.
And
I'll check the Rotten Tomatoes as well.
When I saw 6.9, I was a little bit gutted. I knew to go in and have my own experience with it because maybe my opinion wouldn't echo that of what everyone else's does on IMDb. It doesn't echo that on IMDb. This is a fantastic film, but again,
quick question here.
Yeah.
Is Javier Bardem the devil or is Javier Bardem God?
God, but I think the message of this film is that God is imperfect.
Correct. Well, I think that's there is a philosophical argument in there that if you are forever omnipotent, you cannot be forever omniscient or omnipotent.
Yeah.
No, what's the other one? Omnipresent.
And there are moments where
you can't be one without being. So you can't be all three of them. You can only be one.
Yeah. And there are moments in this film where he can't be everywhere. Like this might be, I might be reaching too far with this, but where the brother is murdered, he leaves with the family. You could argue his original family, if he was the one who created man and woman.
The thing, when in Cain and Abel, if I remember correctly about the Bible, I can't remember which one was the killer. Is it Cain who's the killer?
This is the movie where you need to read the book before seeing it.
I believe it's oh god, I want to say that Cain, yes. Basically, Cain is the killer. Cain is the one who kills Abel. When Cain kills Abel, his punishment is that he walks the earth alone. So when they all leave the house, he is left alone with Mother Earth, funnily enough. And he is basically cast out from the house by her. Mm-hmm. This film is genius. This film is a work of art. Absolutely. We've talked about it a little bit, but we need to talk about that crazy ending. Just the ending in general. We've talked about the bit with the communion and everything like that. Let's take it from the very, very start. We have the fans turning up at the house. We have her saying, I don't want them here. And then she goes into labor. Mm-hmm. People start coming into the house. The publicist comes in. They start putting up things, obviously selling his poetry, selling his books. Some people start stealing it. She then gets a contraction. It's painful. It goes into that kind of reverb kind of shot. We then have her going into the house a little bit further. People are stealing things from the kitchen. She tries to phone the police saying that people are stealing her stuff. The phone gets taken away from her. She continues to have contractions. She then moves into the next room where she sees the publicist start shooting people in the head. Then the riot police come in. We then have basically a riot taking place. We then have shots coming through the window. We have a SWAT team come in.
You have like sex trafficking and...
We then have another contraction. She goes into the next room. There's sex trafficking whilst the SWAT team are running through. We then have like extortion and murder and literally any sin you can think of gets done with. We then have an actual war zone take place. Like gunfire, shots from outside, everything. And then she finally reconnects with Javier Bardem. and they manage to kind of make their way to Sanctuary, but it's not easy. Like, it's not an easy road. That's a 20-minute long sequence right there, and that might be the best sequence of any film so far this year. I'm pretty sure that apart from the reverb bits, it's completely uncut, and there is zero music in those scenes. It's just the sounds of people. It's the sounds of man and woman and all of the things wrong with the world. And as far as
it's ultimately where his creation gets out of hand. And like when it starts off, all seems well and good. I guess people multiply, and it's basically like everyone has a different interpretation of religious text or whatever you want to call it, of faith in general, which leads to wars, which leads to murder, and many other horrendous things. And that's pretty much all summed up in this one crazy fever dream 20-minute sequence. And it's really masterfully done. It's sort of like, it's almost like the history of Earth and faith.
Yeah.
At one moment.
It's something where if you took it in its own and just had it as a mother trying to get through all that, it would be the greatest short film of all time. It transcends a single scene. That could be the entire film. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else will beat it out this year as far as scenes are concerned. Powerful scenes. Like, it is a powerful scene. You've kind of grown to know this person throughout the entire film. You see her as a somewhat likable character who just wants to be left alone, and all of this suddenly takes place in her house. And her house is her heart is the house. And seeing it basically being torn to shreds and abused with everyone inside of it, it's horrifying. That's what it is. It's not a pleasant experience. You don't enjoy any of it. And that's what a good horror film does.
Yeah, and then this essentially brings us to the very, very end of the film, where Jennifer Lawrence gets away in an act of desperation. She just needs to be rid of these people. She needs to be set free. Her infant son's just been murdered. She decides to burn the entire house down. Now, I kind of knew where this was leading, because at the beginning of the film, we get some information about Javier Bardem saying that his previous family were in the house that they're currently living in now. It burnt to the foundations. Everyone was killed.
We even see at the very start, we see I don't even know if it was Jennifer Lawrence or not, but on fire. We then see the house get healed. We then see the stone light up at the very start.
Javier Bardem, for some context for anyone who's still watching, there's a crystal that he puts on like a little plinth, and the ashes and decay of the house just like wither away and escape, and it turns into this beautiful, pristine, newly fixed up house. And Jennifer Lawrence says that she's basically rebuilt the exact same house that was Javier Bardem's to the exact detail. And at the end, she burns the house down, sort of like history repeats itself. It's only in the very epilogue scene that you really understand the gravity of that statement, that history repeats itself all the more. And it's a very, it's just miserable, depressing message at the end of this film. It really is. It's almost a very futile message.
It's the message.
We'll never learn.
We'll never learn.
And it's just
it could be about religion. Cycle. It could be about the way we treat the planet. It could be about fame and the effects of it. It could be about anything. But whatever the film's message was, the film's message now is we will never learn.
Yeah. And the ending shot is bookended with the first one. Javier Bardem takes the burnt corpse of Jennifer Lawrence, who's still alive. And he says, there's one thing that still remains, and that's your love. Do I still have your love? And she says, yes. He does like a Indiana Jones Temple of Doom thing where he takes the heart out of her chest. Kalima. And then the heart withers away into a ball of black ash. He breaks into it, and in there is like a carbonated stone of the crystal, which was at the beginning of the film, which was his most prized gem. And then he places it on a new plinth. All the decay and ashes of the house go away. Newly refurbished house. I guess you could say from the ashes breathes new life, new creation. You could go with that argument. Camera pans into a bed. A woman sits up in bed, and it's a new woman, sort of similar looking to Jennifer Lawrence. And history's just going to go on. And I think like you could chalk up Javier Bardem's inability to write and just general depression with that, in that, you know, you could say that he's created the world, he's created nature. Now what? and he's sort of in this state of limbo. He's looking for that next thing, and mankind is that next thing. He enjoys the high of it, but you know, you can have too much of a good thing essentially, and the human race essentially turns into a plague of locusts at the end, murdering each other. You have to wipe the slate clean. I guess you could go with that for like generations and species as well as history moves on.
If we're taking her as the physical embodiment of the planet, basically it gets to the stage where Mother Nature is pushed only so far to the point where it will finally destroy itself.
Yeah.
That's one interpretation of it. Yeah. Once again, don't go see this film, but at the same time, go see this film.
Yeah.
I don't think I can speak about this film anymore without going insane.
We've literally just talking, we've unearthed so much more, and there's so much we've left out. So much we've left out. There's probably hundreds of possibilities you could.
We could literally talk about this for the next 2 hours, but
we need to call it.
We need to call it.
In short, I would recommend this movie. Go into it with the right frame of mind. If you like these thinking kind of movies with these big idea films that are initially crazy when you first watch them, but when you read into them a bit more and you can pick up the message, the metaphors, you can gravitate towards it, then absolutely go and see this movie. It's fantastic in that regard. If you are going in for purely based on a horror film, there's like a couple of scares in there. It's a fairly uneasy mood, but that's really not what this movie is about. That's sort of a front.
Be marketed as a thriller, not a horror.
Yeah, the whole psychological horror thing, that's a front. It's like a masquerade for what the real meaning of this film is. There's many other films like this with this like really sort of like artsy message behind it, which I don't gravitate towards. I find them very pretentious, very up themselves, and a bit poncy. But something clicked with me on this one, and
it's probably it might be down to the direction. It might be down to just the fact that with most of those films where it could be interpreted one or two ways, it's one or two ways. This film can be interpreted 50 different ways.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's
got an average. It's got an average user rating of 2.5 out of 5.
Is this the moment where we, as creators of this channel, weep for the human race?
But I can understand why. I can completely understand why.
Yeah.
And Chris, they will never learn.
They won't. But we have to forgive them. We have to. Can we forgive them? Can you forgive them, Tayte? That's going to do it. We're getting cerebral on this one now. So that'll do it for our review on Mother. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Which camp do you belong in? Do you hate this movie? Do you like this movie? How did you read into it? Your interpretations, anything like that, please do let us know in the comments. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, there'll be more movie reviews from us. We've got a Kingsman review this week. We'll have a review on the original Kingsman film and Kingsman The Golden Circle, probably midweek, I would say. I've realized I have taken a very extended hiatus away from trailer reaction videos. There really hasn't been that many out that I've really wanted to talk about, but they will be back this week. And we've also, what else have we got? We've got Film Club on Friday. We'll be doing Swiss Army Man. And there's a bunch of other shows. There'll be the news show that we do, the cinema news on Thursday. So look out for that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get a notification every time we bring out something new. And also be sure to check out our Facebook and Twitter links and all the socials in the description down below. That'll do it from us. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.